Our big story here, starting off at 12:30, is how Michiganders see investment here in Michigan taxes the quality of our education. The Detroit Regional Chamber just released a batch of new numbers about 30 minutes ago. Here are some of the highlights for you. 38% of people in Michigan think our education system is a disadvantage to the state's competitiveness, but 65% say it's more important to invest in education and infrastructure than it is to cut taxes. And only 1 in 5 believe that Michigan is more competitive than other states in our region. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at what this all means. Joining me now is Richard Zuba. Not only is he our pollster here at WDIV from the Glenn Gariff Group, he also did the polling for the Chamber. It is good to see you, Richard.
Hey, great to be here. How are you?
I'm well. I mean, as we look at these numbers that the Chamber just put out at noon here today, and knowing that you crunched through them, what were some of the big things that stood out? I feel like I took kind of some of the top headlines out first.
Well, what we wanted to get at was this idea of, did Michiganders think the state was competitive compared to the other 50 states in attracting jobs and business? And what we're finding is only 20%, 1 in 5, think Michigan is more competitive than other states in attracting business and jobs here. And I think that's a real eye-opener, that not even Michiganders think we're that much of an advantage here. So that was the big takeaway to me. But one of the things we did was we looked at 9 different factors. And on each factor, we asked the voters, is this an advantage, a disadvantage, or does it have no impact in Michigan's ability to attract new jobs?
And let me jump in. Let me jump here with some of the numbers for you, just so you can break it down for us a little bit. People said there are 5 different ways to make Michigan competitive for future generations. And when you came out and looked at the numbers, 34% of them said to fully fund Michigan's public education system, increasing student performance, which is a big one. 21% said heavily invest in training, preparing workers for those high-skilled jobs. We've talked about this all the time. 19% say better financial incentives to beat states, which I think is very interesting. 18% improve infrastructure. Only 3% invest in creating walkable, vibrant communities. So are the things that we've been talking about, do we have it backwards, or this pretty much lines up?
Well, I think one of the things we're seeing here is just voters are telling everybody, if you want to make changes in the future of Michigan, it has to go through education, specifically our public schools. This is not just this survey. We see this in all of our surveying, that the voters of Michigan overwhelmingly believe strong public schools, both funded and student performance, are essential to moving the state forward and making the state competitive. And I think, it's easy to get distracted and take your eye off the ball. But, we tested these 9 factors, and there were only 3 of them that voters said were a disadvantage to the state. And one of those factors was our state's public education system. Another factor that was a disadvantage, and I don't think this will shock anybody, is our state's infrastructure. And I think those are the things voters are saying, really, you have to pay attention to, and that's where there's going to be shifts in competitiveness.
This data is always so important to take a look at, but explain for people then how this translates to any kind of change or policy changes moving forward.
We partner with the Detroit Regional Chamber to do these surveys probably 3 to 4 times a year. And I think the Detroit Chamber very effectively uses these numbers. And we approach this in a completely nonpartisan way to just see where voters are. It helps educate the leaders. It helps educate the business community of this state. So everyone has a solid footing and a solid understanding of exactly what the voters think. And even within these numbers, we see some pretty significant differences by partisan affiliation on a couple of these things. But again, those 9 factors that I mentioned that we tested, there is overwhelming across all parties. There is overwhelming belief that Michigan's biggest advantages are its natural resources, its public universities, its large businesses and automobile companies and our skilled workforce. Those are overwhelmingly, there is agreement across parties on this. And, there is agreement pretty much that our public education system and our infrastructure are disadvantages. So for all the conversations we have, you and I have about, Michigan being divided, there's great unanimity here. And, rather than look for the divisions, I think this helps point people towards where there's agreement.
Let me walk you a little bit down the political road as we go into 2024, because these are also revealing, you can see in the numbers, what people think are the most important things on their mind when they're looking at candidates and they're going to be voting in 24, when they're looking at the economy, when they're looking at inflation, if they think that they are in the same place that they were before COVID or feeling even a little bit better, but their thoughts about what the next generation and what their success rate will be, for people younger, that they feel that maybe they don't have as good of a shot.
We regularly ask questions about the economy, and they're consistent questions because we want to see if they change over time. And I don't think I'm exaggerating to say that the voters of Michigan are extremely sour on the state of the economy right now. Give you a couple of numbers. 69% of voters believe the economy is weakening or in recession right now. 45% of voters think inflation is going to get worse in the next year, compared to 33% that say it will be the same and 17% that say it will get better. These are not good numbers for any incumbent party on the economy heading into the next year. But
and I think let me jump into that, because we just saw a poll come out from CNN today, Richard, that has President Trump at 50% and President Biden at 40% polling in Michigan right now, according to CNN. With the data that you have seen about the economy and just talking about how that is going to impact incumbents, do you feel that that is maybe the reason why we are seeing this kind of poll?
I think that is part of the reason we're seeing this kind of polling coming out of Michigan. And, we've got quite a bit of polling coming out of Michigan right now. And yet I want to caution, it is still early in this race. A lot of voters have not paid attention to things, but this sourness towards the economy is certainly hurting Joe Biden in Michigan. The other thing that's hurting Joe Biden in Michigan, I can say, is that he has a singular problem right now with his base of Democrats. Candidates that don't solidify their party base are in trouble. And that's why you're seeing Joe Biden in trouble right now, particularly with young Democrats. And that is very much the case here in Michigan. And, they're going to have to step it up and run a far more aggressive campaign than we're seeing to date. In fact, I don't think we're seeing much of a campaign to date in Michigan. And, these are not good numbers if you are in the incumbent president.
Yeah, well, we know we're about 5 weeks away from Iowa, and things are going to start to go from there. I couldn't resist getting a little politics in there at the end there. Richard Zuba, our pollster here at WDIV, of course, the Glenn Gariff Group, and really great numbers with the Detroit Regional Chamber poll. And we'll make sure that we have all of that information for you up on clickondetroit.com if you want to see in depth how a lot of this breaks out. Really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.